This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and today I've got Arthur Parkinson with me, which is a great treat. And so we're continuing our series on really low maintenance gardening, but low maintenance, flowery and colourful gardening. So this isn't about box, topiary, etc. and you. This is about floweriness, but things that are self-perpetuating. So we've already done self-seeding perennials, and so we thought we'd follow up with self-seeding annuals and biennials. And these are plants that you put into the garden 1 year, and they will then pop up in lots of surprising and sometimes annoying, hopefully beautiful spots that you weren't expecting them. And they're rather wonderful for that. In books, you'll see them referred to as volunteers, which is quite a nice way of looking at it. Anyway, hello, Arthur.
Hello.
We're going to do 6 each. What would be, in no particular order, what would be your number one?
Well, I'm going to kick off with something that I do associate with you, because one of the first photos I ever saw of Perch Hill was of your farmhouse when you just had the front cottage garden and the lovely brick paths were there, and you'd got gorgeous tulip Abu Hassan and I think another one, West Point.
Yes.
And it was properly Persian carpeted right up to the door. So beautiful, very chocolate boxy, with forget-me-nots underplanting them.
Yeah.
And I know since I don't remember going to Perch Hill and seeing that many forget-me-nots, but you must have gone through a phase of thinking they were the thing.
Yeah.
And for my grandma, Sheila, in her garden, she absolutely loves them, because the lovely thing about them is they do self-seed with gusto, but they're so wonderful and prolific. And then when it's time for them to fade out, my grandma Sheila can literally get a little walking stick and she gathers them all up like tumbleweed.
Oh, yes.
And by
brilliant.
the time that's happened, the new babies are literally underneath that season's plants. And there's nothing nicer than just taking a bulb planter and dobbing your tulips through them.
Yeah.
So I associate them with you, my grandma, and also I associate them with Chatsworth House. I know we've spoken about it before. There used to be a parterre of box that Deborah Devonshire's Duchess put in, and every autumn it would be pot-toppered, if you like, with forget-me-not plugs, and then up through the forget-me-nots would be these most gorgeous apricot-y, mostly parrot tulips, so apricot parrot.
Yes,
and it
beautiful.
was so lovely and just crazy and wonderful, that contrast of the lovely pinks and cerise reds with that blue anchor carpet. And I think forget-me-nots, actually, they are a faff to pick because they're very fine. But if you can be bothered to pick them in the vase, they do last almost a week, I find.
Yeah, they're good. And again, seared, I think it makes a real difference with them. I love them. I mean, funnily enough, you and I are going to chat in a few weeks' time about my new cut flower book that's coming out. And I've got quite a lot of old photographs, sort of archival photographs.
Oh, lovely.
And there's in the introduction, there's a really that exact picture that you're thinking of, which was when Jonathan first came here, which was, I think it's 1997 or 1996.
I'll tell you where I saw it. It was in a Reader's Digest. Remember Reader's Digest when they did lots of hardback gardening books? It was in that. My granddad had got it.
Really?
I didn't have a clue who you were, but I've still got that book, actually, purely because there's that photo in it.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh, well, I think it's a full page pic in the introduction in my book. I agree. I love them. The only thing I would say about forget-me-nots is that they do self-seed a lot. So you just, if you possibly can get them out, at least some of them, before they've seeded everywhere, it is a good thing, because otherwise they almost become like weeds. I mean, I love bronze fennel, but I remember for the same reason I'm now a bit wary of it. We do have it, but we hoe it off quite a lot. I really remember looking out of my bedroom window over the same garden, so exactly the same place that you're talking about. And I said to Adam, there's the most extraordinary thing has happened. Somebody's put a crimson carpet over the garden. What on earth is going on? And I couldn't work it out. But it was overnight. It must have just been sort of May time, and it was warm and moist. And this carpet of bronze fennel had germinated overnight. And
Wow.
it was absolutely extraordinary. And there was just a total carpet over the whole garden. And forget-me-not can do that, and bronze fennel can do that. And it doesn't take anything to hoe it off. It was fine. But if you've got it all through a perennial bed, it's more of a fiddle to hoe it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing.
But both wonderful compliments to tulips. I mean,
so much.
That bronze fennel's gorgeous.
So much, yeah, exactly. So my first one, just in thinking through the year, was actually cerinthe, which, gosh, I mean, I apologise for even talking about it because I'm sure you will know it. Cerinthe, spelt with a C, not an S. Honeywort, it's just the most fantastic plant. I've been growing it since I harvested seed in Spain, in the south of Spain, 32 years ago. So when we first came here, it was in my very first cut flower trial, which I actually write about in the new book. And I measured the harvest from each crop that I'd grown from seed. And cerinthe was in that very first trial. And people think that it doesn't pick because you're right. If you pick plonk, it flops. But if you pick and sear the stem ends, then into cold water, then into the vase, it lasts 10 days in the vase. And the reason that I love it is it's a self-seeder, that because it's so early in the year, it can start flowering here in March from autumn self-seeding. And then those will make babies that start flowering in June or July. And those will make babies that start flowering sometime September, October. So we've got some grandchildren of this spring's crop already flowering in the garden here, in our gravel garden, where it just is self-seeding really happily. And yeah, it's just the most wonderful plant. It's called Honeywort.
Do you always pinch yours out, Sarah, or do you tend to leave it and just cut the first lot?
Yeah, I don't pinch them. No,
you don't pinch them. Okay.
I mean, I do cut them, but I mean, we grow so much of it, I don't bother to pinch it. I mean, I know that does make it more branched. And if you do pinch it, you will get something that's 45 centimetres by 45 centimetres. I mean, it really makes a big plant. But I think self-seeded, it's kind of happy as Larry. It's just such a good plant. So got to mention that. So on to your next one, Arthur.
Well, continuing with kind of a purplish theme.
Yeah.
If I was going to think of one bedding plant type plant you'd buy at this time of year in the autumn, it'd probably be the violas.
Yeah.
And even if they're just plonked and not picked, not dead-headed, and allowed to go to seed, they form those lovely little button seed pods, ripe little berries, don't they?
Yeah.
And then they split and scatter. So I always remember in my nana's crazy paving, there'd always be a few viola heart size, which is the variety that I know you sell as a seed. And it's not it's quite close to the wild one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's not really been messed about with, and it's very, very small and much more refined than a lot of the bedding violas that you'll buy.
Yeah.
And I think it looks so lovely if you let it self-seed, but if not, let it self-seed into little terracotta pots, and then it'll just get on with life. And if you don't pick it, it will quickly go to seed. But all the violas, if you just buy them, the cultivator varieties, and let them go to seed, they will cross-pollinate, and you'll have a lovely mix that does scatterguns through the garden.
Totally.
So I love them.
And I guess the theme that we're emerging with here is what we're talking about: hardy annuals and hardy biennials. And so forget-me-not is actually a hardy biennial. So just like you say in your Nana's garden, in Sheila's front garden, where you've got the forget-me-nots flowering and then underneath you've got the seedlings, that's exactly what happens often with a biennial. And that takes me on to Anthriscus sylvestris ravenswing, which is a blackleaf cow parsley. So all the way down our lanes in May, of course, is cow parsley. And it's the sort of archetypal British lane side flower, isn't it? But I really love that dark leaf one. And we find it by far happier just self-seeding rather than us seeding it or doing it as plugs. I mean, you can introduce it to your garden as plugs, but then encourage it to just self-seed. It's not like bronze fennel. It won't take over. But I love it. And I just, when I was walking around the garden this morning trying to have ideas, it's already here as these beautiful lacy, dark crimson tussocks of leaves. And up through that will come the tulips. And we've got a bed in the annual cutting garden, sort of second bed on the right, where it's perennialized, so to speak, even though if you actually labeled a plant, you'd realize that it was the offspring of the previous generation. But it's just completely happy there. And it just creates this beautiful carpet for early in the year, and then has a typical umbellifer white flowers with black stems later on, in May, June time. But those are both, they're hardy biennials. And then your violas are hardy annuals. And so, in fact, they're self-seeding. And we have it here where it's just self-perpetuating under the kale. Just as the weather gets colder, it seems to germinate, and up it comes, and it flowers often right the way through the winter, pretty much. Viola tricolor is its Latin name of the species one. And underneath our red boar kale, it just creates such a lovely carpet. So that's a real winner. Over to you, Arthur.
Yeah. Well, this might be controversial saying it is a self-seeder, because I've never personally allowed them to self-seed, because normally I've taken them out of the garden because they've finished. But there's an allotment plot I go by, and last year they had cosmos that were planted, and then this year it was quite a mild spring, and all the beds in this allotment, little raised beds, are full of cosmos, and they weren't planted. They've self-seeded from the adult plants just being left in. Yeah. And if you can leave cosmos in the garden, I think that's a good thing, because the finches love the seeds.
Yes. But
they do look a bit manky, to be honest, because Dazzler and Purity, they make big plants, so most of us will cut them down. But it was interesting to see how fuggish the self-seeded seeds were compared to the ones that were planted. So I think they were probably just a Dazzler mix originally, and they've come back up.
Yes.
And me being me, I said, would you mind if I cut a few cosmos for a wedding I had in August? And so I cut them all, to a pair of leaves, as you should do.
Yeah.
And they've gone on and on. But because they'd self-sown themselves right at the edge, I think some had even sown themselves into the gravel paths, actually.
Yeah.
They were really strong, big plants.
It's so true. Self-seeded things just, I guess they just get their roots down just exactly at the time they want to, in the place they want to. And they do better. And that links very nicely into another little thing that I was going to talk about, which is Ammi majus. So I find Ammi is really transformed by autumn sowing. And if you sow it in the spring, you get a perfectly good thing, but it is a bit wimpy in comparison to autumn sowing. And I remember I first learned about this at Great Dixter, which is that they get Ammi to 6 foot, but they sow it in the autumn, put it in a cold frame, pricked out in a 1 litre pot, I think, certainly a 9 centimetre. And then they plant them out in the back of the border, in the long border at Great Dixter. And they get to these really stonking great giants. And by autumn sowing, we have managed to achieve these bigger plants. But this year, we had a really kind of da-da moment, which is that we'd had a big patch of Ammi in the annual trial garden here. And they had actually self-seeded all the way around the edge of a little grass bed. And in the grass, almost like cow parsley, they were forming these really chunky plants. So the rosette of their foliage was 45 centimetres across or something. And they just flowered for 3 times as long, just as you said with the cosmos. They just went on and on and on. And it was dappled shade. It was quite a sort of shady little spot, but they loved it and they had chosen that spot. And so now we're going to grow them there and do them as plugs through the grass, because it looked beautiful, just like cow parsley, but even more elegant. So I think Ammi majus definitely benefits from, you can sow it in February and prick it out, but I would put them into a decent sized pot before you get them out, I would say, even though they're hardy annuals. So over to you. Our number 7 in our list.
So the thing that transformed a largely paved garden that I knew was panicum frosted explosion, that I'd always actually grow purposely in a seed tray, because I love using it as pot toppers and billowing things with my dahlias. But it escapes from the pots within a season, and if you've got loose mortar in the cracks of your paving slabs, it will like it there. Yeah. And it makes these lovely little firework display rivers of green. And then, of course, the birds, the sparrows, the blue tits, they all love it. But pick it for the vase, and it will stay lovely and fresh, and it will keep giving you lots of fresh little firework seed heads. So that's good. But also, what also self-seeds of that family are the annual millets, particularly the lovely little millet Red Jewel.
Yes,
Cerinthe Red Jewel, which is quite an expensive seed actually, and I'm quite pleased that it comes back.
Yeah.
But it definitely likes the harshness of the mortar between the paving slabs rather than the rich soil of the beds. There's none of it self-seeds in the little flower beds. They like it in the harsh mortar cracks where there's, quite dry, and they get their little roots down. So I found this year I did a tray of the sparkling fountain panicum, and I sowed it direct into a seed tray. Didn't cover it because it likes the light, and it didn't germinate. I got impatient, so I used that compost to pot up cosmos that I'd got, and it worked out really well because then as the cosmos were growing, underneath them came up the little panicum seedlings. So they were together as little brothers and sisters, and it worked out really well. So if you find that they've not germinated very fast, I think they like the action of feeling like the soil's been disturbed.
Arthur, that is so funny you say that, because really, genuinely, we had exactly that here.
Really?
Which is that we'd sown some panicum and they didn't germinate. And so I then was I was pricking out some seedlings. And so I was using that same compost.
That compost.
Because we'd given up on them. And then Josie and I noticed that there were little panicum seedlings. And we're like, but we sowed that, but that was in the seed tray. So someone must have upturned the seed tray just into the compost bucket that we had on the potting bench. And they had germinated. And so that's exactly the same. So is it root disturbance or is it length of time between sowing and germinating? I don't know.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I just remember thinking, sod this. I've used nice compost and they've not germinated. I'm not wasting the compost. I'll use it to pot on. And, I just chucked it into a big, trug that I'd got. And so, it wasn't surface sown. It was all willy-nilly within the compost as the cosmos were being pricked out and potted up. And so, how funny. They must like the disturbance of the soil, I suppose.
I think so. Yeah. I'm just trying to think, if somebody has a problem with germination of panicum, then maybe literally turn it upside down
like an upside down pancake thing.
and stir it around a bit and then put it back in and then you'll be fine. Isn't that funny that you had exactly the same as us?
Yeah, and it's a tiny seed, so you spend all that time spacing it out. And
I put these little labels and these pricked out, I think they were antirrhinum, saying antirrhinum plus ? Because I thought, I'm sure that's panicum because it's monoleaf, isn't it? Rather
like
than
a little tick, isn't it?
Like like sweet corn or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it did indeed turn out to be panicum, isn't that funny? So there we are. Okay, well, my next one would definitely be a grass. So number 8 for me would be Brisa maxima. And again, it's just one of those things that some people say, oh, don't allow that in your garden because it will self-seed too much. I just don't find that. I just find it's not a pain, certainly on my clay soil. And it's just so delicate and really early. And it reminds me of sort of dewdrops on grass in a meadow. And that's why I love it. It's called the greater quaking grass, Brisa maxima. And there is actually a perennial Brisa media, which you see at Chelsea, because it looks at its best in May. And that's the thing about the Brisas. They're the earliest of the grasses, really, to look their thing, to do their thing. And so, Brisa maxima for me, get it in your garden once and it will keep reappearing. I used to have a beautiful necklace made by a wonderful jeweler who sent it to me in the post because she knew I loved it. And there was just all these links of little Brisa flower heads in a chain. It was such a lovely thing. Yeah, anyway, Brisa maxima would be my next and sort of carries on from the panicum. Comes first, so May to sort of August, Brisa, and then August to now, panicum. So, wonderful, wonderful thing.
Do any birds eat it, Sarah, of that grass? Or
do you know, Brisa, I haven't noticed. I mean, I think they must, but it is early. It's at a very abundant time, isn't it? May and June, there's tons of forage for them, whether it's caterpillars or aphids or slugs or slug eggs. But I haven't seen it actively being harvested. But if you did it in the meaner hungry gap, they probably would, I would think. Yeah. So back to you for number 9.
So I'm going quite taller now, which is Nicandra passeloides, the shoefly flower, which
lovely.
You introduced it to me because I remember seeing it on the seed packet, and it was quite an up-close photograph of that lovely blue exotic flower with the lovely black and green Chinese lantern type seed pod.
Yeah.
So I remember growing it at the Bridgewater factory, and I had no idea how tall it was going to get. And I sowed it in a shady raised bed alongside one of the factory walls. In the garden, it is a bit of a wallflower in a way because the leaves hide the beauty of the flower and the seed pods, which the seed pods emerge almost as soon as the flowers come out. The flowers don't last that long, and then you're left with a lovely dangling lantern. So I treat it much more of something to pick than something that I admire in the garden, because the leaves are quite big and lettuce-like. But I was in Yorkshire 2 months ago, and luckily there was a whole bed where it had completely taken over in a vegetable garden. And I was so pleased to have picked it, because I then had to do an arrangement with huge cafe au lait dahlias, which aren't normally my favourite thing in the world. But because I'd got the nicandra and I'd stripped the leaves off the nicandra and cut both things really tall, it really made the bulk of the cafe au lait dahlia more elegant and gave such shape instantly to this vase, which was like not a vase me and you would pick. It was like a barrel vase. But thanks to the nicandra, it gave the vase instant animation. So I love it, and I hadn't used it for a few years, and it reminded me how lovely it was. And it is one of those things, once those seed pods dry, the little seed circle within the husk splits and scatterguns. So I know in Australia it's banned, and I think it might be in places where, in exotic places, it's not a welcome plant because it's so invasive.
Oh, I didn't know
but
that.
in British gardens, it's okay.
I was thinking in your dahlia patch it would be brilliant, because it would...
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I mean, it probably would take over a bit too much, I think, in a small space, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say no to it. I'll have to see. I'll have to introduce it and see how it goes. I mean, it's easy to root out. It's not going to send down a huge anchor root. It's quite easy to pull them out in the spring if you think, oh God, there's a green carpet of little
exactly.
shoeflies.
Yeah, shoeflies. I've actually got it on the table right now with a big vase of chrysanthemums, because just as you say, towards the end of the year, it's quite difficult to find things. And like with the chrysanthemums, I end up sometimes picking pelargonium foliage to arrange with them, because there isn't that much out there. But the nicandra pods, and I always remove the leaf, just as you say, because they've got such a big surface area, they flop really readily. But I think it's underestimated. The little apple at the apex of the Chinese lantern pod, blue tits absolutely love it. And it is like a mini apple, and it's the size of a crab apple, the fruit in the middle of it. And you see them breaking into the apex of the seed pod. They don't go underneath, they go at the top and eat away. And I think they love the seeds. So my next one, so sort of our number 10, is very linked to that, because it's one of those plants that people either love or hate. And nicandra, just like you say, is considered by some, and I didn't know it was in Australia, a prohibited plant. But Persicaria orientale, which is a dingly-dangly fishing rod plant, it has these sort of pink caterpillars hanging from, it gets to about 90 centimetres, even a metre. And it is so funny when people come here for the August and September open days, they really divide. And if I actually ask people actively, do you like it? Some people go, oh, I don't know, it looks a bit, coarse is what they say. But other people just like, oh yeah, that's my favourite plant in the garden. And once you decide whether you do like, and to be honest, I was the same. I remember seeing it at Great Dixter when I was a volunteer there 30 years ago, and I just wasn't sure. But once you like it, you really like it, because it's self-perpetuating. So we have it with Dahlia labyrinth and various sort of peachy, pinky things down the perennial cutting garden path here, and it just self-perpetuates. We don't have to sow it from one year to the next. We might hoe it out if it goes in other places, but we concentrate it in that area and in another area on the bank going up to the greenhouse. And it's just brilliant. So Persicaria orientale, it's called something like Jack, Look Over the Hedge, or Jack, Look Over the Fence. I can't remember.
I thought it was Kissing Over the Gate. Have I got that completely wrong?
No, that's it. Kissing over the Jack over the hedge.
Quite like Jack Over the Hedge.
Jack in the Hedge that's that other thing, isn't it? That flowers in spring.
I don't know.
What's it called again, Arthur? Kissing Over the Gate.
Kissing Over the Gate, isn't it?
And why is it called that? Because
I've no idea, because there's nothing about it that makes you think of a kiss. It's a
I guess it hangs,
thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it hangs over.
Like
oh, that's it. You're absolutely right.
Weird.
That is its name. Okay, and so what's your final one?
Nasturtiums, because I have sweet memories of my Uncle Andy and his then wife Dee. They took over this allotment, which had been used as kind of a car garage for years. So it was the most hideous allotment, full of rotting cars and mechanics. And I remember being little, and through the carpet paths they'd laid down, loads of nasturtiums just billowing up out the really crap and probably intoxicated soil from all the oil and God knows what else.
Yeah.
And nasturtiums, they do like, I think, to grow where they are. I grew them this year for the garden museum thing that I did because I wanted something in flower for early June. So I sowed nasturtiums really early in, I think it was end of February, which was very early to sow them. But I did them in root trainers because I knew they wouldn't enjoy being disturbed. And they seem to really enjoy the depth of the root trainers, actually.
That's a good tip.
So yeah, I could then just slide them out, just as you do your sweet peas, into their final terracotta pots.
Brilliant.
But, you know, they will self-sow, of course, which is why we're mentioning them. But I'm not sure how badly they cross-pollinate, because I love all the new varieties that you've brought to my attention, like Ladybird Rose and Purple Emperor. I'm not sure if you just stick with those, if the resulting children keep that lovely purplish lilac tone, or if they go back to orange.
Yeah,
So,
I think we've had quite good results with that. There's one very strong one, which is called, I think, Bloody Mary, and it's a kind of yellow with a really strong crimson blotch. And it's very distinctive, and definitely that comes back. I'm not sure if Purple Emperor has come back. I'm not sure. So certainly some do.
They're big little walnut-like seeds, aren't they? So I suppose they lay dormant in the ground, and then when you say prepare your vegetable garden or your spring allotment and you dig it a little bit, not that we should dig anymore, of course, I shouldn't be saying that, but I'm sure some people still do. Not a vegetable garden, I'm sorry, listeners. But I'd imagine those little walnut seeds, when they go from green to that grey little hard coat, they just stay in the soil and they wait to be disturbed a little bit, and then up they come. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so my final one, in a way, is back to the beginning of the year more, which is the Californian poppies, the Eschscholtzias, the impossible to spell Eschscholtzias. But yeah, they remind me of my childhood, actually. My mother had them with nigellas, which of course is another one we could mention. My mother had them in two quite sort of informal beds around a lawn where I was brought up. And she had Eschscholtzias and nigellas, and she just let them just do their stuff. And they were underplanting roses and a few shrubs like Weigelia and things, sort of spring, summer flowering shrubs. And it was incredibly low maintenance because they just literally, the Eschscholtzia came earlier and then the nigella. So Eschscholtzias in my mother's garden, which is just outside Cambridge, and it's quite dry and it has very, very high, that whole part of the world has very high sunlight levels and very low rain levels. And so often it would be in May, it would start with the Eschscholtzia, and then gradually the Eschscholtzia would mix with the nigellas, so the blues and the oranges together. And then the nigellas would take over and the pods would take over. But then, just like cerinthe, quite often the Eschscholtzias would have self-seeded. And so as the nigellas were going over into sort of July, the Eschscholtzias would sometimes already be in flower again. And then it would go over. But it was rather amazing, that shifting carpet of self-perpetuating beautiful colour and flowers. And so I think Eschscholtzias, and nigellas are quite a good thing to just direct sow, scatter to get them going initially, and then just let them get on with it. Having said that, if you want to grow them as a cut flower crop, you need to thin. My mum just left them to do it. But of course, that means they don't flower for as long. So if you're going to do them as a cut flower crop, you need to space them. Eschscholtzias at about 10 inches and nigellas about the same. Whereas if they self-seed, you may get, half an inch or whatever. And so they're competing with each other. So they're a bit more transient. But it was a lovely combination. And that it sort of takes us right back to the beginning again. Because exactly as you say with the forget-me-nots and Debo Devonshire having them as this sort of understory of the bulbs.
And was your mum's Eschscholtzia that bright goldfish orange?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it was.
Because now they're available in lots of different pastel colours, aren't they?
They are. They don't always come true.
They don't always come through.
But the standard orange comes back all the time. I find the sort of softer, there's an ivory one and a very soft pink one. But I do tend to find that they seem to be here. The ones that come back tend to be the orange variety.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful, Arthur. Again,
lovely. Lots of things people can chuck around.
Yeah,
have fun
chuck
with.
around, hardy annuals, hardy biennials, and just let your garden get on with it. And so I hope with what we've talked about in this series of 3 with Arthur is we've got the sort of bigger, slightly more statuesque perennials, And then we've got the self-seeding ones. And then these will form the carpets below both of those. But that will make for a very low maintenance, flowery, colourful garden. Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and Arthur Parkinson, and talking about self-seeding annuals and biennials. Next week, I'm going to be on my own for a solid 6-week season, and I'm going to talk about colour in the garden, which is something I guess I'm sort of known for, but I really want to explain the history of why colour is so important to me in a garden, and my colour sort of system or theory, how to use it in your own garden, and then really breaking it down into the 4 different palettes and what they make up, and the way that you can get guaranteed colourful gardens for as long as you possibly can. So I'm actually going to give real plant recommendations. So it's going to be quite a detailed series that I hope will suit some of you. It will cover every single colour, so you can choose your favourite. So you may choose to listen to some of the episodes and not others. But anyway, a 6-part series with me talking about colour in the garden. So I hope to see you then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.